Hey everybody, I'm Patrick Murray with Patrick Murray Real Estate, your guide to Calgary real estate. And today we're going to talk about something called an RPR, or a real property report. And I know some of you may be saying, well, boy, Patrick, that sounds boring. And I get it, that's fair. But let me tell you, this is one of the most important documents in a real estate transaction that a lot of people don't pay attention to, or at least not enough. So today we're going to discuss that. We're going to talk about, what a real property report is. We're going to talk about how it affects sellers, how it affects buyers, and we're going to talk about some real world scenarios as well. But before we do that, if this is your first time in this channel and you'd like to know everything there is about Calgary real estate, about learning about real estate transactions, about protecting yourself, maybe you want to see some home tours, maybe you want to learn a little bit about some neighborhoods, maybe you want to see what's going on with the Calgary real estate stats and what's happening from month to month, then guys, you are in the right place. Please just hit that subscribe button and click that bell so you get notified every single time I release a new video. Now, I've lived in several major centers in my life, settling in Calgary way back in 2001, and I've been a real estate agent here since 2010. And all this allows me, well, a little bit of specific knowledge about the city of Calgary and the surrounding bedroom communities. So if you are considering a move, whether you're selling or buying, please feel free to reach out to me. I'd be happy to assist you. All right, guys, let's do this. Let's jump into this RPR business right now. So an RPR is a legal document. And I want to stress the words legal document because this is extremely important. This is an important document. It's prepared exclusively by a licensed Alberta land surveyor. It's not prepared by a realtor. It's not by a home inspector or anybody else. This is a specific land surveyor. And they are licensed under the Land Surveyors Act of Alberta. Now, the RPR does a couple of things. First, it shows the title boundaries of your property. So in other words, meaning the exact legal edges of the land that you're going to be owning or that you do own based on the land titles office. Second, it shows the location of the visible improvements on that land. So, for example, we're talking about your house, your detached garage, maybe a deck, a shed, a hot tub, a parking pad, retaining walls, fences, anything that's been built on the land. This needs to show up on the RPR. Now, the surveyor physically shows up at your property and plants survey pins and then measures everything and produces a scaled drawing with precision. And the RPR itself tells you what's there and where it is, but it doesn't tell you whether those things are legal. And that's where a second piece comes in, and that's the evidence of compliance or the stamp of compliance by the city of Calgary. And this is needed. So you need the RPR, but you need an RPR with a stamp of compliance. So there's two things. So the city reviews the RPR and confirms whether all the structures comply. Such things like setbacks, which is how far the structure is from the property line. The lot coverage rules, this means the maximum percentage that your lot can be covered by structures. Easement restrictions, so that's areas on your property where you can't build because utilities or the city have legal access rights to that area. And when the city issues a stamp of compliance, you get a letter that essentially says, hey, everything on the property as shown on the RPR complies with the current bylaws for the city. And that combination, again, that RPR with the compliance stamp is the gold standard. And it's what your real estate lawyer needs to complete the title transfer in Alberta. Now, the RPR isn't just a legal custom, if you will. A lot of people think that, but that's much, much more than that. It is actually in black and white on the purchase agreement. And the standard contract is used in majority of residential transactions in the province, and it includes specific language or a clause requiring the seller to provide the RPR with a stamp of compliance to the buyer. And it is done through the lawyers, generally speaking. The default position is that the clause is that the seller delivers the RPR and compliance to the buyer's lawyer before the closing date. And if the seller can't deliver it, or if the RPR reveals non-compliance, well, the contract gives the parties a framework to work with but it does not automatically kill the deal. What it does do is trigger a further negotiation between the parties. And again, at that point, it's oftentimes between the lawyers that are negotiating on your behalf. Title insurance is sometimes floated as an alternative to an RPR. And yes, title insurance can cover, a whole bunch of risks and certain survey-related risks. But something that's important to realize is that some lawyers will not accept title insurance in lieu of an RPR. And this is a big but, title insurance is not a substitute for knowing the actual condition of the property. It compensates you after something goes wrong, possibly. And an RPR tells you before you close whether something is wrong. Those are very different things. And as your realtor, when somebody is suggesting on the other side, on the seller side, that a buyer just get title insurance and it'll be fine, to me, that's a red flag. I always recommend trying to get the RPR. All right, sellers, this section is specific to you. And you need to pay attention here because this is where we do see a lot of problems. First off, it is your responsibility to provide an RPR, a real property report, with a stamp of compliance. Full stop. That's it. And the first question I usually have for my seller clients is, do you have an existing RPR? And a lot of homeowners, well, they simply don't know. So I usually recommend, hey, go back, look when you bought the home, check the documents from your lawyer. Chances are there's a copy of the real property report within that. Let's go through it together, look through and see if there are any issues on the property. Now, if it's been a while and you've done anything to the property, you're definitely going to need a new RPR or at least an updated RPR. And if you got the existing RPR, if the company that did the survey is still in business, and most of them are, you can call that company, ask them to pull it up and to do an update, which is far less expensive than the cost of a new RPR. And I'll let you know right now, the cost of a new RPR does vary from surveyor to surveyor, but it's something you'll want to pay attention to. Now, maybe the RPR is just a few years old, it's compliant, chances are everything's good. But if the RPR is older and there hasn't been any changes, you might still require an update because sometimes bylaws change and the rules change around setbacks and what you can and can't do with the property. So you want to make sure it's updated for sure so that you don't have any issues. Here's where sellers get into trouble, and it can be a common scenario. And again, it's kind of like I said, 2015, maybe they get an RPR at closing. 2018, they build a 400 square foot deck on the back. And then in 2022, they put up a new fence on the side yard. They go to sell in 2024, sell their lawyer the old RPR from 2015, and the lawyer flags it immediately. Now they need a new RPR. And the challenge with this is if it's at closing or close to closing, sometimes getting these RPRs or getting the survey and then the stamp can be 2 to 4 weeks or longer sometimes. If the deck or fence has a setback issue or bylaw violation, then you've got a new compliance problem on your hands. So that's something to be mindful of. And let's talk about what happens if the RPR reveals a problem. So let's talk about setback violations. A structure is too close to a property line, for example. In Calgary, there are setbacks for rear garages, for example. They have to be so far from the property line and so far from the side property line. And if your garage was built by a previous owner without proper permits and sits, say, for example, 0.3 meters from the line, well, that's a violation. Encroachments, that's where a structure physically crosses the property line into a neighbor's yard or land and vice versa. Such things could be like a fence that's maybe built 6 inches off the property line and veers into the neighbor's yard, or maybe even just the eaves of the garage that extends just further out over the property line, which is illegal encroachment. And then there's easement conflicts. So a structure has been built within a utility easement or municipal right-of-way where construction is prohibited. So when these things come up, there's something you want to pay attention to. It's something you want to jump onto right Now you want to talk to the survey company, you want to talk to the city, see what you can do. Maybe you can get relaxations, get something signed with the neighbor. I don't know. It depends how cooperative the neighbor is, but it's something you want to pay attention to and get on right away. Now, buyers, this one's for you. The RPR is your shield, so to speak. And here's how to use it. When you receive the RPR from the seller, don't just nod and hand it back to the lawyer. Take a good look at it and see if that scaled drawing is showing where everything is supposed to be on the property or where you think it's located when you saw the property. You're looking for a few things. One, you want to know, is everything on the property shown on the RPR? So for example, if the seller built a shed last summer, it's not on the RPR, well, that could be a problem. Is the RPR out of date? That's another issue. Number two, is the compliance stamp present? The City of Calgary compliance letter should be attached, but if it's not, you definitely need that stamp. And if it says non-compliance, then even for a minor issue, there's a problem. And you need to understand what it means before you close. Number three, check the date on your RPR. An RPR from 2009 on a property that looks like it's had work done since then should definitely raise a red flag. And number four, look at the easements on the property. Calgary properties often have utility rights of way along the rear of the lot. And if there's a shed or fence within that easement, then the city technically has the right to remove it to access utilities. And that's now your problem as the new owner. We don't want that to happen to you. And so when you buy a home, the RPR shows, for an example, maybe the RPR shows the garage sitting exactly on the property line with a 0 setback. And the city compliance letter says non-compliance, rear setback violation. Well, again, that's a problem. Your lawyer accepts title insurance instead of pursuing the resolution. You close, you move in, and 2 years later, your neighbor sells and a new neighbor hires a surveyor, and suddenly there's a formal complaint to the City of Calgary. And now you're dealing with a bylaw enforcement issue that was, well, sitting in your closing documents the whole time. And that's why you want to have this discussion with your lawyer. And it's why title insurance is nice to have, yes, but you also want to make sure you have a compliance RPR. So ask the questions and make sure you understand and talk to your realtor and talk to your lawyer. All right, just a few hard and fast facts just to keep you up to date here. Number one, turnaround time. Well, 2 to 4 weeks, could be longer, so you want to get on top of the RPR scenario as soon as possible. RPR costs vary from surveyor to surveyor, so that's something to pay attention to. It's always good to use a reputable company, and most of them are. Ask your realtor. They can provide 3 different recommendations for you to choose from. RPRs are ordered and paid for by the seller. It's the seller's responsibility to provide the RPR with the stamp of compliance to the buyer's lawyer. It is required by your real estate lawyer to complete a title transfer. You can't do it by notary public or doing it on your own. In Alberta, you need a lawyer to complete the transaction. And reusable, if no changes have been made and the RPR isn't too old, yes, potentially you could reuse the RPR. So these are some things to pay attention to when you're thinking about a real property report. So there it is. Everything you need to know about a real property report. It's not just paperwork. It's a legal document that defines ownership, protects your investment, and can make or break a real estate transaction. If you're a seller, go ahead and pull it, get to work on it right away. Pull your RPR, check the date, think about any changes you've made to the property, and talk to your realtor early. If you're a buyer, don't treat the RPR as a formality. Read it, ask questions, make sure the compliance stamp is there and that it actually covers everything that is on the property. And if you have questions about RPRs, about buying, about selling, about anything happening, I do read the comments. Feel free to drop a comment in there. You can only comment if you're subscribed. So if you're not subscribed, hey, what are you waiting for? And if you are considering buying or selling in Calgary, my information is below. I'd be happy to have a conversation. Hey guys, thanks for joining me. I look forward to catching you on the next one.